Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletopped. This is your host, Nick, and today I'm joined by two of the best friends of the pod. You've heard them before, but I'll let them introduce themselves. Who are you guys? Why are you here?
I'm Danny Bellel, and I'm here to talk Arkham, the living card game today. One of the games I've dumped the most time into of my life, and it's incredible and great, and I'm so happy to be here, Nick.
And I'm Mac, and I'm also happy to be here. Yeah, happy to talk all things Arkham Horror, baby.
Yeah, I want to have both of you on because both of you have been so into the Arkham Horror collectible card game, and they recently came out with a ttrpg that we've been playing through. Mac, you've been running that game. We are playing sort of. Is there a specific expansion that we are playing that you've sort of adapted from the card game, or is it just sort of like? This is something because we are using some of the cards, so I just wanted to check in if there was a specific one we're doing.
Yeah, we've adapted the Path to Carcosa kind of campaign from Arkham Horror the card game, or I have, into basically a module for Arkham Horror the role playing game, and it's working way better than it has any right to, which is great.
I was going to say it's kind of crazy because I find that, and maybe it's because you guys are so familiar with the card game and you kind of know the pace and the steps of the story that you kind of go through, but it feels even kind of better than a module because it's very seldom that you like go behind a screen and are looking something up in a book. You're just sort of like, this is the thing, you know what I mean?
It does all the work, I think, that because it's not a module in the sense of like, here's the encounter and here's the stat block and here's the puzzle they have to solve. It's here's an idea of what needs to be accomplished. And there's what's great about the card game is you can solve problems through clue getting, through combat. And so Mac can be very open-ended with like, here's a problem, here's how we solve it with the TTRPG. So it writes the story for him, which is like the biggest thing. And the writing is also gorgeous.
The writing is so good in the campaign itself, in the card game, and it's very evocative in the card game. I mean, a lot of people consider it to be the best campaign, like we're playing a very good one. And part of that is because of the writing. And a lot of the cards, how I use them is I use them as kind of almost like I'm a very improvisational GM, and I use them almost as a suggestion, right? That you might get in like an improv scene, basically, where you guys walk into a room, flip over a card from like the deck of bad things, like the encounter deck that you would have in that specific scenario that fits in with the session that we're doing. And then that kind of gives me a get on, what is the bad thing that is going to happen to them now that the story is moving on. You know, it gives me enemies and also just things that happen.
Yeah, and I want to talk in depth about sort of like how you're doing this, because there's also like monster design and a bunch of other things that you have sort of adapted from the cards. But why don't we start from sort of giving people a basic sense of what the TTRPG is? So it's a dice pool game. So is it six or it's six dice, right?
It's six. Yep. It's 6d6, yes.
Yep, 66 at the top. As things happen to you, you accrue what are called horror dice, which replace one of the dice in your dice pool with a different colored D6, and you will roll that every time you make a roll. And if you roll poorly on the horror dice specifically, it's a 1, correct? Or 6?
It's a 1. Yeah.
It's a
you
1,
roll
yeah.
a 1 on a horror die.
Yep. So if you roll a 1 on a horror die, bad things happen to you. Mac has a little table that's behind the screen. He gets to roll on it, and something bad, all the way up to you being lost in time and space, can happen to you because of all of these different rolls. Other than that, that's kind of the main mechanics. When you come into a scene, you're able to kind of like use as many dice as you want to accomplish certain things, but you only have the amount that are in your pool. So I think that this is actually a really elegant way of like speeding up gameplay when it comes to narrative scenes, because you enter into a room and it's like, okay, search the room, whatever you want to do, but remember you have your 6 dice, and then once that's over, the scene is over. And that just keeps us kind of moving at a clip. Is like, in order to win, like in order to succeed, you usually have to roll like 3 dice, just to make sure. And so you're kind of like in each action you want to do, committing most of your dice pool if you really want to succeed with it. And you also kind of want to retain some dice in case something bad happens and you can respond with them. So that's sort of the basic sort of arc of it. It still does have the stats that we are all kind of familiar with, except I kind of want to talk about them later on too, because I find them a little confusing. Mm-hmm. But is there anything else you guys want to add about just the general playing of the system?
There's
one more thing that's go ahead, Danny. Yeah,
there's a mechanic that lets you shoot the moon, where if you end a session with full of horror dice, it lets you level up something that could save you later. And so there's this really fun resource management of, there will be some players that will want to expose themselves to more horror, and that will, I also think, invoke roleplay. And so just how elegant the system is with being a base D6 system and the resource management of it, I've been really enamored with, as opposed to a D20 system or I do this thing, I roll until I do this thing, and there's no real good or bad effect for it. So just to kind of double down on your love of it, it really is, the design, gorgeous.
Something that I really enjoy about the system too, and then that I've been enjoying in systems in general, is the concept of a simplified health pool. I don't really love the abstraction of the number, like an HP number. I don't really love that, but I do love the idea of, you know what, I have like 6 health points and this thing reduces them, and then when I'm out, I'm out. And this game does that in an incredibly elegant way, and also solves the problem of, wait, if I'm really hurt, then why can I still do all the stuff that I could do before? And this game is like, oh, well, you can't actually, because every time you get hurt and you take a damage, you lose one of your dice. And so when you have 6 damage, you have no dice. And the game gives you a very easy way out of this, which is taking a semi-permanent injury that can be healed quite easily, actually, by another player just making a knowledge roll to heal it in most cases. But if these build up, that's what leads to character death.
Especially in a fight, dice. Right?
Yes, especially in a fight. So, there are some times when I have a monster and I'm like, I want to make this feel scary, so I'm going to hit you for 5. And if you want to do anything on your next turn, you have to what's called strain yourself to get an injury to keep pushing forward. And these injuries span from, oops, you got knocked down, that sucked, get back up, to you broke your leg and now your leg's broken and now you have -1 on every skill that's relevant to your leg. So good luck in the rest of the fight, idiot. So it is very swingy and narrative in that way, which is, I love that about the system.
And what's cool is both for the dice pool, the way health is structured, and for injuries, it goes both ways. So the players know that all of the entities that Mac is rolling for, the GM is rolling for, also can have injuries incurred upon them, also have a limited dice pool, also need to hold on to dice for a reaction. And so like that's very cool also as a player, knowing like, okay, well, if I hit it enough times, it can't respond, but it has this legendary response, or if it's an Eldritch Horror, you don't know what the injuries actually are going to do. So that perfect information is great.
Yeah, it really makes the monsters feel different from other monsters, because like, let's say you have a berserker monster or something and you get the feeling of like, oh shit, he is rolling like all of his dice every attack, like this guy's coming in for the kill every time. So then like as a player, like you were saying, Danny, it gives you sort of a knowledge of like, oh, this monster wants to hit me really bad and I bet it's really terrible if that happens. So like I need to get the fuck away from this thing, and then we can take pot shots at it all day because it doesn't have any defense dice after that. It's like it's all about getting into combat. And so like you can make monsters feel very different mechanically without actually changing the rule set of the game at all. Like like in D&D and other systems, there's a kind of a temptation to homebrew specific abilities, or homebrew sort of like a legendary effect or a lair action or something that can make it feel different and special. But that's always sort of on top of the base layer rules. I feel like this game system is able to do that without actually making you do any of that. It's just sort of like you are going to be using this sort of set of rules that every monster has to go by, but you can make it feel different within those rules that you don't really have to go outside of them too often, which I find very cool. Like we've had a lot of different kind of horrible encounters, and like when we're facing a cultist, it's very different than when like a huge tentacle comes out of like the backstage and like grabs someone and throws them across the room, you know. So
there's a really cool system that the strain mechanic allows as well, where you can strain yourself for an injury, because monsters can accrue injuries as well, as you said. And I wasn't making my monsters difficult enough in learning any role-playing game. I start kind of soft because the players are new and they're learning the game too. And so I'd rather err on the side of make it too easy than make it too hard. And I had this big scary boss monster that just didn't really matter at all in the first session we played. And so then they were like exploring around this historical society, and I threw this giant flesh monster at them with like 20 dice. And I'm like, how are they going to kill this thing? It's just a crazy berserk monster. And Danny, you're like a FromSoft guy. What's the name of the bar in Sekiro? If you break it, you kill the thing instantly. Is it like a stance meter or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like basically the injury mechanic kind of works like a stance meter, where you can actually force a monster to take injuries. And then if it takes a high enough, every injury that you have, you add 1 to the result on the table. So I'm just rolling a d6 on the table. But if they have 1 injury, I add 1 to that. If they have 2 injuries, I add 2 to that. And if you get like 10 or more on this table, you die. So that's how they killed the monster, was just by giving it so many injuries that it just couldn't stick together anymore. And I just think that's so cool.
It
that's
felt
such a
incredible.
fun,
It was really fun. Yeah.
a fun alternate way.
Yeah, I've actually never seen it happen in a TTRPG game where everybody came together with special sets of skills that each other didn't have. Like Danny, you like enchanted my gun so that it could shoot a little bit better. Someone else had the thing where they could see the weak spot so they could change what injury rating or whatever. They could roll twice for it.
Yeah, that was Summer's ability. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Ethan just had a machete and just chopped.
Yeah, and Ethan had a machete.
Yeah, and Ethan had a machete, and the machete was really good because it made me roll twice on the injury table, and then he got to choose which outcome it was.
And so we could
the
stack
combination,
it.
the combination of just like everybody beating the crap out of this thing, but not just like reducing a health pool to 0. It actually felt like tactical in the way that you guys did it, without me having to create like a movement puzzle, which a lot of D&D fights end up being, which is great. Movement puzzles are fun, and they need to exist for D&D combats to feel interesting, I think. So it doesn't just feel like turn-based combat, I go, you go, until one of us falls over, which I talked about before on the podcast. But it actually feels like, oh, there's something we're doing here that is different than a normal role-playing game to get the outcome that we want.
The impetus of us doing this was, we had ended a session in a different rule set, and I think we were like, well, we want to do stuff with models, because everything had been theater of the mind, or a lot of it had been theater of the mind. And so a lot of the stuff, Mac, that you're doing with combat that is really cool is an extension of the rule set, but is also because every encounter there is a map for, and there are minis for, and we're leading into that as well.
Yeah, and I feel like too it was this is something as well that I don't really get a great feeling about in other systems, is like the monster was scary the whole time, even though we were like just putting a bunch of holes in it, and we're like, okay, it's bleeding. Okay, now it's like whatever it was stunned, all these things. We were building up all these injuries, but at the same time, like my character's leg had been shattered, and I was like laying on the ground shooting at it. Like somebody had used a grenade to try to like just take this thing down a little bit. Yeah, everyone was like running away, or like trying to figure out whether or not it was like possible to save each other while trying to whittle this thing down. So at no point were we feeling like we got this thing, we got in a stun lock and we're juggling it. You know what I mean? It's like we were always very close to death, which I feel like this system, because if we had gone all in aggressive, then it would have just taken us out immediately, because we would have no defense dice and it would have just stepped on our necks and we would have died.
Yep. You know, I think part of the coolness of that, or that monster specifically that Mac put together, is in the world of Arkham, which is not specific to this TTRPG certainly, but it's written into every campaign that you're going to do, there's going to be some eldritch horror that is not understandable, that needs to be taken out by unconventional means. And I love that, because if I'm playing a fantasy RPG, there's going to be some eldritch horror, there's going to be something that's beyond understanding. And because this is in the world of Arkham, that's built into the bones of it. I think that being said, I wish there was more in the rule set for madness, because the idea, the madness dice are great, and the table that Mac rolls on, or the GM rolls on, is really fun. But I do wish there were more things that affected gameplay, of like, your turn is not yours, or everyone switches characters, or something that affects the gameplay itself. That would be an extension of madness, which the living card game does from time to time. There's a scenario called the Blob that ate everything, where you could, through some happenstance, have your entire collection devoured. And like, that just as an idea is not that anybody's going to do that, but I would love to see more of that as an extension of the madness mechanic, or played around with a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe some like role play suggestions or things like that. The horror dice are very much like, the horror dice make you lose dice. They make you lose dice and run away from stuff. That's kind of
they
what
make you afraid to roll them too, like psychologically.
Yes.
Yeah,
They psychologically make you afraid to roll them. The damage or the injury table makes you worse at doing skill tests. And that's just kind of binarily what they do. And the higher you roll on the table, the worse that outcome is of one of those two things. But it's really just two things that you can flavor however you want. So yeah, I agree, Danny. I think that there is more that they could put in there. And maybe they have. I haven't read the whole book. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of optional rule about that, or something we're not doing.
Yeah, but, it's an interesting rule book. I have read the whole thing, because that's what I do with rule books, the way I'm built. And the rules section is so much lighter than the section on each town around Arkham, and also the like lore behind each of the great ones. And so again, we've talked about how elegant the rule set is, but it's really a simple kind of rules as written, and they spend a lot of the book itself on lore and background for characters. So I don't know if they're like looking in, and I haven't done much digging online on how many people are playing this and kind of what table rules there are, but I would be curious how other people have adopted it.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, why don't we switch gears a little bit into talking about where we think that the system has stuff we would change, stuff that maybe we want to add in, like you were talking about, Danny, and also just stuff that we were like, oh, this is not hitting us as well as some other aspects of the game. And then after that, we can kind of talk about how you are kind of cannibalizing its related properties, Max, so that you can build easy to run games. So let's start off with the stuff like you guys were talking about, like the madness mechanic doesn't feel particularly like integrated with like the role playing aspect of the game. I think that is hard. I mean, like even like D&D and stuff has the exhaustion mechanics and some stuff like that, but it's kind of hard to get that to bleed into sort of a role-playing element unless the player is super into it. So like I can understand how it's hard to design for it, but I think I agree that it doesn't feel as like Arkham-y if it doesn't have something like that. But for me, the thing that I have been struggling with this system is primarily the skills, like
it's about this.
Yeah, like Mac, you can take it away because you've also had to run it, but like there have been multiple times at the table where we're like, okay, so there's a wits and there's like an intellect test or whatever.
And
what is the difference between these? It feels like they really wanted to just be different than like the normal like strength, charisma, wisdom, whatever. And so they went with this new thing, which is totally fine. I'm down for that. But it's like kind of hard to discern what you're supposed to be rolling sometimes.
I think that the best way to demonstrate this might be, I'm just going to list the skills really quick. Okay. This is going to be important for later. There's agility. There's, first of all, there's 10 of them. Some of them are way more clear than others.
Or too many, but keep going. Yeah.
Agility, athletics, wits, presence, intuition, knowledge, resolve, melee combat, ranged combat, lore. And each of these is associated with a number. And this is something, no matter who I've taught this game to, that they get confused about. and I get frustrated with everybody, but it's not their fault apparently because everyone gets confused about it, which is that the number, the higher it is, the worse the skill is. It just means that that's what you need to roll on the D6 to succeed. But everyone's like, wait, but high number good though.
High number bad because it's
high number bad.
High number bad because, and this is in defense of the book, there's a plus sign next to the number. And so it's like a 6 or greater, a 5 or greater. However, in every player's defense, every other rule set, high number bad or high number good, low number bad.
Yeah. So anyway, but
one other thing I want to add about that, Mac, before we keep going, is that also on the sheet that's laid out, if you can imagine this, dear listener, there is the name. So let's use wits. And then you have your skill like number on it. And then next to that is another number, which is always going to be like usually lower than it. And it is the maximum that skill can be lowered to. And I always found that a little bit like if I was a new to TTRPGs person, I'd be like, what the fuck is different between these numbers? Yeah. And then when you're leveling up, you can change kind of like either, like you can change one of the numbers, but not the other. Yeah, you can change the one number.
It's just telling you what your character based on their archetype is able to go down to because low number good. So with experience, you're lowering the numbers. But what I want to demonstrate here is this, and maybe you two are just so good that you're going to know this. There's wits and there's intuition. Guys, what does wits do? I have it right here. I have it listed right here. What does wits do?
And this is what, and I'm going to answer that question in a second. And there's also lore. So I will answer that question in a second. However, what happens at our table, which I assume happens at every table, is Mac will say, okay, this is a thing I want you to do. And the player, whoever it is, will say, I guess that's insert skill name that I roll the best in.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, well, that's clearly like, wit, so that's clearly intuition. It's
literally at one point during that fight, Danny, Summer was like, yeah, like, could I have read about this monster? And so I know its lore, and that's what I'm looking to see its weak point. And you're like, I guess.
Knowledge, maybe?
Yeah.
Could I perhaps use lore on this? I have a player. I'm playing another campaign of this, and I have a player whose wits is like 3+. And and because wits is so, there is no wits in other things. Like wits is not wisdom, and wits is not intelligence. It's not those things. It's something completely different. So he's like, "Can I use wits for this?" And I'm like, "Dude, I literally still don't know." So what? Hey guys, what's wits? What is it? What's it used for? Tell me one thing it's used for.
I'm gonna answer this. Wits is for like your cunning. So like as a PI, you would use wits to know where in a room to like look around and find the bank book.
Okay, that is wits. Good job, Nick. You passed my little wits test. Danny, what else is wits for?
Oh, that I was going to say what Nick was going to say. Because I would say
it's for four other distinct things in the book.
I would say
four other things.
Having your wits about you, so traveling through somewhere dangerous and knowing like who to talk to or how to present yourself or hold yourself in that way.
No, that's presence, Danny, but you're close.
Presence. Of course.
No. Wits, what you're thinking of is wits, and this is a literal sentence from the book, is coming up with a clever retort or joke.
Oh, of course.
Can you imagine? You're playing and everyone's just like a huge nerd and they're like, hey, well, actually, I would like to do an awesome joke here, please. And then roll them.
Which is nice because that means that you don't have to be a seasoned improviser or have a background in comedy. You could just have a 2+ in wits and say, insert funny joke here. Insert memorable callback here. Roll for it. Great.
It's funny. It's just wits is just for like, it's just like, I don't know, man. Like if the other ones don't apply, it seems like wits. So I'll tell you what the 5 are. It's telling a lie with a straight face, which makes sense to me.
Sure.
I would think that would be presence.
I would think that would be presence as well. But, yeah.
Well, searching for or spotting something hidden, like Nick said, coming up with a clever retort or joke, rigging up a trap.
Oh.
One of 5 sentences in the book. Or analyzing a clue to reveal important information. No, that's not knowledge or lore. That's wits, guys.
Yeah,
this is the thing, is that the game is so like...
Well, that's what happens when you stretch the number of attributes. Because, and like, when you stretch the number of attributes, there's going to be weirdo crossover because you need each one to feel unique, but then there's going to be stuff that falls in. And like, there are other systems that suffer from this. I think like the Warhammer or TTRPG has a million attributes, same thing. And so knowing what is what is going to be.
Do you think that they did this so that you didn't have too few things to dump your experience into to improve?
Maybe.
Like I'm because I don't even know why you would do it. Same with the ranged versus melee combat. It kind of feels like if you're trying to compress the sheet, you can just say like combat or whatever.
I'm going to push back on you. I'm going to push back on you there. I think that it's fine. I think that's fine. I don't know. Swinging a sword feels different than shooting a gun to me.
Sure.
I agree with Mac on that. But, and dear listener, so you understand, when you start, you have a 6+ in everything, and then you pick 3, I believe, that you get a 5+ in. However, you can start with experience, and you can spend that experience to lower or better yourself in one of these 10. And the amount of experience it takes to go from like a 6 to a 5 or a 5 to a 4 exponentially increases. So, Nick, to your earlier point of like, is this a way to pad out gameplay? I would say yes, because the only other thing to spend XP on is, what are they called? Knacks, right? Which are your skills or specific things that your character can do unique to your class, which could quickly become overpowered if you take every single knack. And so getting all of those numbers lower is a way to pad out gameplay.
Do you think that part of it is just that they were like, oh, we need to make sure that these games can last like multi-year, like, D&D campaigns can?
I hope not.
Because maybe. I feel like the best way to play this game would be playing it the way we're kind of playing it, is like go through a Lovecraftian adventure and then you're kind of done and you move on. Even if you want us to keep using the same system, that's great. You just move on to like a different set of characters in a different part of the world doing a different thing, because otherwise like we were talking about the padding out, even right now we've played like 4 maybe 5 times, Mac, and like I feel like my character is like coming online. Like I feel like I'm a level 10 D&D person.
Better. You're better than you were. I mean, I would make an argument that in the Arkham, connecting it back to the Arkham Horror living card game, I would argue that any system only really needs, and I'm talking about needs here, doesn't want, needs 4 skills: hot, strong, smart, fast. Those are the 4.
But what about funny? What about a funny retort, Mac? Where does that
funny is
magical?
Funny is a mixture of smart and hot.
Interesting. I would say even just hot. I would say you could put it in just hot.
Funny is hot. Yeah, I'm hilarious.
If you're hot enough, you're funny, baby.
Yeah, come on. Said 3 very average-looking individuals.
Yeah. Listen, we had to go to comedy school to make up the difference.
Yeah, that's true.
You got a personality.
So, but I think all the skills, like if we break them down, they do stuff. So, lore is attacking with magic. That's what lore is.
Yes. Yeah.
Ranged combat is attacking with a ranged weapon. Melee combat is attacking with a melee weapon. Resolve is protecting yourself from horrifying things. That's what resolve is used for.
Or healing someone else, right? Or is that presence?
Resolve is healing yourself of horror. Presence is healing someone else.
Yeah.
Knowledge is being smart. Intuition is kind of like insight in D&D. It's kind of like intuiting people. Presence is like leading a group of people, being charming. Witty, I think, is supposed to be the other side of the coin there of like lying and stuff, but it doesn't quite end up there.
So I think it's supposed to be like kind of like scoundrel, right? It's supposed to be like a rogue sort of version of the skills.
Like street smarts kind of vibe. And then athletics is just like being strong, and agility is being fast. And agility is also used to get out of the way of people hurting you with melee weapons or ranged weapons.
Yeah.
So they do have a purpose, except for wits. I think wits could eat it, and the game would be better.
Yeah.
But if I have 9 attributes versus 10 attributes and I'm a game designer, I'm going to go 10. That's just on my character sheet. It just looks better.
It sure does.
2 rows of 5, baby.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right. I also don't think that it's I feel like it maybe is only a problem if you look at the list that you just said, Mac, of the 4 things that can be used for. And as a GM, you're like, and those are the 4 I'm going to let it be used for. Like, I think you've been pretty good about letting us sort of be like, oh, I thought that this was kind of supposed to be kind of in this realm. Like, this thing I want to do would be in sort of the, the presence realm. And you're like, okay, make an argument to me. But I also that I think is fine the way that it is, even with like a little bit of vagary in there. I think that really only would be a problem if you're like, actually, there are 4 things you can use this for, and this is not one of those. So like, tough luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to the book's credit, they also give a little paragraph about it describing, like, they say, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they say someone who is good or better in wits is a quick talker, deceptive, can easily find hidden things, and makes brilliant deductions from the subtlest of clues. So it's like, that's a nice little description. Okay, it's kind of about being like an investigator.
Yeah.
Investigate is a thing in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a better word for that. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, and this is interesting, too, because investigate is I'm going to forget because I don't like D&D and I'm shoving it out of my brain space. But, like, that's a skill.
It's a skill, not an attribute.
Not an attribute.
And so in D&D, you have core attributes, but then you have skills that are extensions of those attributes. In Arkham, you just got 10. And so the 10 do all of the things. So in that way, you could argue Arkham actually has less than a D&D because it doesn't have that double layer. And there's also less math because I don't have to see, well, what is my modifier on my modifier of just like, I have a D6. What do I need to roll? And then that or above.
And how many do I want to roll is essentially like,
Right.
It's way less math too. It's great. I mean, and in general, I really like the system. I would say that's a big one for me. Can we talk about like the book layout and knacks?
Yeah.
Yes. That.
So knacks are basically like feats. If you're thinking about like D&D 5e talk, they're abilities that your character has. Some are much more impactful than others. I find that the balance on them is a little strange. I think for the min-maxer at your table, they're going to have a great time building a bunch of feats. My other group that is not you guys doesn't even know what min-maxing is. They don't have a concept of that, even like what that could possibly be for them. And so they just take these abilities and they're like, wow, this never happened and it felt like crap. I'm like, did you ever try and make that happen? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, in this knack, if you get 3 6s on a knowledge roll, you can give someone back an insight, which is incredibly valuable resource. So have you ever rolled 3 dice at once in this whole session? And they're like, I can roll 3 dice at once? I'm like, oh my God.
Let alone on a knowledge check, yeah. And I'd also say, so knacks are not just feats, but they're also abilities. Because you can take a knack that is your, fighter maneuver or your mystic spell or whatever it is. And so I like that you spend it, but the layout of knacks and finding the knack that corresponds with your character, because there are neutral knacks that everyone can take, and some of those are, upon reading them, are very specialized to some of the classes, because in that general knack, there's like a spell that can blind everyone, and it's like, anyone can do that? All right. And then having to flip back and forth from what like level or layer is the knack, what class am I, and then do I have the requisite XP to get it? Thank you for mentioning that, Mac, because I didn't realize how much that bothered me until you said something. Yeah, that layout really bugs me.
Yeah, I think that also the way that a lot of the knacks and the temperaments are sort of designed is that they have sort of a push-pull kind of thing on it, where it's like, at least a lot of the temperaments the temperaments definitely have this, where it's like, you do this, but if this happens, bad things happen. Because like, for example, I think mine is like I'm obstinate or something, which means that I get to once per like game essentially say, hey, I'm not going to take that horror. I'm just not going to do it because I'm obstinate and like I have protected myself in this way. However, anytime I roll badly on a horror dice, Mac has to roll twice and take the worst outcome for me. So it's like there is a kind of a trade-off for some of these things. And I think that like you said, Mac, if you are at a table with people who aren't comfortable sort of like taking in sort of a more complex way of like, okay, so mechanically I do this, and also mechanically I'm punished if I do this, and I'm thinking about that as I play. Like if your players aren't comfortable with that, then it can feel pretty punishing for no reason. Like you said, like I didn't even use this thing and now it's hurting me. Like why is this happening? So yeah, I could see that as well.
Yeah, and we're talking a lot about the things what we would change, and so I just want to reiterate, I like the system a lot.
Me too.
And I think Mac's running it really well. It's just I am now, and in talking about it, really curious how other people have played it. And did you play it at a con, Mac, before you brought it to the table?
I did.
And you did not like it?
No. Here's the thing. GMing at a con is really hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's really tough to GM at a con. And our GM didn't know the rules. So how the game works is it's separated into two different scenes, narrative scenes and like combat. In narrative scenes, nobody gets their dice back until everyone else uses their dice, which I freaking love, because the more quiet people at the table, the snipers that actually have really good things to say but never get to offer their plan, what will happen is you're playing with 4 players, 3 players will be out of dice. That 4th player that never gets to lead the group is the only one with dice left. And everyone turns to them and goes, so what do you do? Which never happens in so many games. That person never gets the chance for everyone to turn to them and say, what is it that you want to do? And that's incredible. And then you spend the dice, and then for the GM, it's kind of like, okay, they all spent their dice. The story is moving forward. Something else is happening now. In combat, that is not the case. Every round you get your dice back in combat. And once everyone's used their dice, it goes to the monster's turns. They use their dice, and then you refresh your dice, and we go back and forth. My GM never told us that, nor did I think she know. I think that in combat, she was like, yeah, you spend your dice once, and then they're gone.
And we were that's like, it for combat.
I was like, and keep this in mind, everybody. It's so elegant how they do it, where if you spend a die, one die is 10 feet of movement. So you're spending dice to move. So I'm like, I can't do anything. I have to get within range of this person to shoot them with my gun, and I can't even walk close enough to them with the amount of dice in my dice pool. And then I'm just going to be sitting here with my, like, doing nothing for the rest of the combat. And she was like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, okay. And Ethan, who plays with us, and I go over to the rule book after that little one shot we did, and we found the rules for combat, and we were like, hey, just so you're doing this wrong. But I had a lot of fun with it otherwise. It was just that one moment really soured it for me, but I still played it anyway because I was like, there's something here.
I agree that this and we'll give our general up-down ratings at the end, but I do agree, Danny, that like while I think that it is always good in a review to kind of talk about the things that are friction points with a system, this system is really fucking good.
It's better than most.
Yeah, better than most. I would say that if you're looking to move your people off of a D&D D20 system, this is a great system that is easy to learn and is also completely different from that, so that they don't feel like it's just like a version of D&D. But Mac, why don't we talk a little bit about how you're using the card game to supplement the TTRPG? Because I kind of feel like this is a huge miss for the publisher, honestly, to not be like, oh, hey, all of your card game stuff are modules that you can run with, and this is like a guide or something, because it has worked so easily so far. Like I haven't even felt like it was you adapting anything. It just felt good. And even like you've had cards out on the table and you just flip them around and we're like, oh fuck, look at that art, that's crazy. like it even has stuff that supplements the board and miniature aspect of the TTRPG. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you have sort of adapted it, and then sort of like anything that you found with that? Because I think it's a great way to approach this, especially if you're a new GM that doesn't have like a Lovecraftian story to tell. This is a way to kind of get one. So
Sure. So, just to give some context, the Arkham Horror living card game, in the game, you play against the game. There is no GM. So these tools were not designed with a GM in mind. They were kind of designed to run themselves. And I found that and I played through this campaign 3 times, I think, minimum, in the living card game. So I'm very familiar with the story and the story beats and how it kind of goes. The one thing that I'll say, and I'll start with the negative first, is that it railroads the players, and you need your players to just kind of be like, cool, we're going to be railroaded. We're doing a module. It's not Curse of Strahd. There isn't an entire continent for us to go to. It's like in session 1, we're going to be in a theater, and in session 2, we're going to be at a dinner party. And if you try and leave the dinner party, I'm going to get you back to the dinner party, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And all of the players at this table, Nick, Danny, Summer, and Ethan, have really done an excellent job of being like, yeah, we're down for that. That's what we're doing. And I think that if your players don't agree to that beforehand, it's a non-starter. But what the game gives you is a campaign guide, which has a setup for every single scenario, and it has narrative aspects to this setup. So I literally downloaded a PDF of the campaign guide, and the opening in our session 0 of the campaign was me reading the prologue of the campaign from the book. Then the game gives you an agenda, which represents the bad guys and how they are advancing the story, and an act, which represents the good guys and how you're advancing the story. So the agenda gives me an idea of kind of how long it should take for them to do stuff, and the act lets me give them an immediate goal to get to. And it's just written right there on the card. For example, the one in the theater, the first one is like you go into this like abandoned theater where everything's fucked up, and the text is, the theater is eerily silent. The old wooden floor creaks beneath your feet, and a light rain gently patters on the roof as you explore the auditorium. There are more rotting corpses amongst the seats, and the rest of the crowd has vanished. It's like, that's some good copy.
Yeah.
And I don't write copy. I just improvise all this stuff. So being able to actually feel like, oh my gosh, I'm actually giving my players like stuff. And then in the act, it's like you pinch yourself to see if you're dreaming, and sure enough, your skin stings and reddens. You take a few deep breaths and try to think rationally. Whatever's going on, you must explore the theater and learn the truth of the matter. And that's me giving the players, this is what you're doing. You're exploring to find the truth of what happened here. So it offers you that, and then it offers you a map, which is so cool. It's unlike any other living card game I've ever played. Marvel Champions doesn't have this. I don't think the Lord of the Rings one has it either.
Mm-mm.
But it has a map. And so in the theater one, it has a map. And in the map, there's the lobby, there's the theater, there's the balcony, backstage, the lighting box, the box office. This just gives me prompts of, when I draw the map and when I have the players draw the map, these are the places that I need to exist in this place. And sometimes we even just move their minis around the general map, the card map.
Yeah.
And it has connections to show you what leads to what. It's so excellent. And each of the cards has a flavor description, which does nothing in the living card game, by the way. And just describes, right, like if you go into the lobby, it says, through the tall glass doors leading into the lobby, you can see that this room isn't nearly as dilapidated as the auditorium. Signs promoting the King in Yellow taunt you from inside. Like, it's just so good, and it makes my life so easy. A big shout out to MJ Newman, who is the lead designer on
incredible
our
designer
playing game. Oh my, she's the best.
Yeah.
Now with Earthborn Games. Anyway, so that's what I do for setup. I use the campaign guide, I use the act and agenda, and I use the map. Then in gameplay, remember, whenever the dice run out, something happens. So for me, that either means I turn to the encounter deck, which is a deck you're instructed to build before each scenario in the living card game, or I turn to the other side of the agenda card, which basically means the bad guys are doing something now. In the theater one, it's a big crazy monster shows up. These cards are very thematic as well. The encounter cards that you draw from this encounter deck. It can be anything from like Whispers in Your Head, which in the living card game is a hidden card that you give to a player or that you like take into your hand and you can't tell anyone else what it is. And you have to do stuff. In the the kind of like dinner party one. There's one called Fine Dining, and the art on that card is excellent. It's just people happily eating bugs. So, it's just like telling you about like, okay, what is going on in this room? What is happening to your players? What is the bad thing that is occurring? And then you don't have to come up with all of it. You can allow the cards to tell you, like they have this encounter set, and there's this card called Spires of Carcosa, where these crazy interdimensional buildings just like blast through the room that you're in, and it's like, cool, that happens now. So all of that is just a prompt to understand like, oh, what is happening here? And then the monsters, so I've been gabbing, but the final thing I'll say about this is the monsters are so, so useful. So I'm going to tell you guys about this boss monster that I put you against, which was this thing from, it's from one of the scenarios where you're exploring a historical society.
Yeah,
yes.
Right.
Yeah. And there's this monster called the Possessed Oath Speaker. And I told you it had 20 dice. That's because there are 4 players. And in the living card game, it has 5 health per player. And so I was like, cool, 20 health. Sounds good. Yeah. And it hits you for like 2 physical damage and gives you 2 horror every time it hits you. And it has an agility stat of 3 and a fight stat of 4. So I was able to use that basically, again, as a prompt when translating it into this game. And then thinking, okay, like, what is it about this thing that makes it so strong, and it looks like this big kind of flesh monster. And what is the thing that, like, how can I translate that into its abilities, right? Like, it has this special ability where at the beginning of the enemy phase, the players either have to, like, ready it if it's exhausted, and exhausted monsters you can kind of ignore. You have to either ready it, or you have to place a doom on it. And doom in the living card game is a timer representing the ending of the game. Once you have a certain amount of doom, the game will end. So how I represented that was, okay, cool. He does something extra during every turn, and I gave him the ability to move for free without spending dice during his turn because of that ability. So I would really recommend it to anyone that runs Arkham Horror, the role-playing game. If you have any of the cards, or you want to get the Drowned City expansion is one that happens. Quite a bit of it happens in Relier, which is like a super cool another dimension. And then there's a bunch of it that happens in Arkham as well. I think that one would work really well for this kind of module thing. But I think it works really well. And I think that there's a really good history of these things. Have you guys on the podcast before, Nick, covered like any of those like 52 card deck role-playing games?
But we really should, because they're so cool. They're really interesting how they design them.
Yeah, because they just like assign basically a table to each card in a 52 card deck, and when you reveal it, like something happens and you draw like a happy little tree or something. In this, it's kind of the same thing, except instead of drawing a happy little tree, like an eldritch monstrosity jumps out and makes your skin peel off.
One thing that I will also mention, because you didn't really talk about it during your explanation of how you use it, but one thing that I've actually really enjoyed was, because one of the main mechanics of the card game is that you, in order to move through the scenarios, you are collecting clues. And as you get more clues, then you can finally hit like a threshold, which allows you to get into a win scenario of the card game. What you've been doing, which I think is really like a great way to do this, is not only have you taken some of the locations and some of the monsters and the copy and all of that, which has been great, but also recently we were at a historical society, as we've been alluding to, and you were sort of like, your goal here is to figure out as much as you can before these cultists destroy all of the information. And so we were literally going around, and how successful we were basically was like, oh, you found a clue, or you found 3 clues. Now you guys have 4 clues that will help you in your next part of the investigation. And I, as a player, was like, this is easy to understand. It's like a very tangible goal. And I can kind of like turn that, like it doesn't immersion break me at all, because we are in a historical society. We're in like a basement, because that's where you store things. Right, Danny? And then we
I wouldn't
went
put him
down
in the basement. I would check the attic where it actually was. But
listen, sometimes things are in basements. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so we were looking through.
Nick loves a basement, but continue.
I do love a basement, and we were finding cultists, but we were also finding these big boxes. And Mac would have us roll skill tests and everything, and how many clues we could find inside. But then you also had stuff like, you know, a monster hit us and you dropped something and then like ran up and grabbed the clue and ran out of the room. And we're like, fuck, if we want to get that clue back, we got to chase that guy down. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way you integrated the sort of system of the card game into the TTRPG as well, which I thought was cool. So
yeah, I mean, the living card game has made me realize how much flavor there can be in an abstraction token.
Yeah.
You know, like a clue token is something that is used in every single scenario of Arkham Horror, the card game. And when I collect a clue in that game, because the flavor on the player cards is so excellent, rarely ever feel like I made number go up and now I'm going to win the scenario better and the progress bar is moving forward. It usually feels like there's flavor to that. And the scenario itself gave me that prompt. It gave me because in that scenario, you are... The cultist can collect the clues if you don't get them, and every time you guys... So I was like, great, what I'll do is I'll roll dice in every room, and each of those dice represents a number of clues, and then when your dice run out in your dice pools, I'll roll a d6 in every room and subtract that number of clues from that room to show, okay, these cultists are doing a thing without me having to actually run like 20 cultists running around this building all at once, like an XCOM kind of situation. You know, it's okay to abstract things. And I think that Arkham Horror, the card game, gives great examples of that, because then in a later scenario, when you guys got stuck inside of an insane asylum, inside of Arkham Asylum, the act, the way that you move on from that, in the card game is actually not by collecting clues. It's by collecting, like, doing tasks in the asylum to create chaos so that the people that are trying to keep you there can no longer focus hard enough on you being trapped there, and you'll be able to escape.
Yeah.
And you guys did a bunch of those things kind of unprompted, because they're things that you should probably do if you're trying to escape an insane asylum and you were incorrectly, held there against your will. So it just gives me prompts for what you guys should be doing and what should happen next. And it's made my life so much easier as a GM, because I don't love a module. I don't love reading the books I don't love reading. I just don't like it. Words.
Words
I don't get them.
Tough. Aren't you reading? And you're reading Stormlight right now.
I'm on the Cloud of Stormlight. I'm 850 pages in, and I've hated every second.
Every second.
Putting the letters together every time into the words, as you call them, is frustrating.
I do. Yeah.
No, but with this, I can have played it. I don't have to have read it. Like, for real, I having played through Carcosa myself, I can assume, actually, it's very much like what running Strahd would be like if you had played through Strahd, if you'd been a player in Strahd. Except I didn't have to ask anyone to run Strahd for me. This game is so narratively beautiful and such a complicated, crunchy, very numbers-based, very difficult card game, the Arkham Horror Living card game. But for some reason, MJ was just like, yeah, and also I'm going to put like badass writing throughout the whole thing. Yeah, I didn't need to do that, but I did do it. So.
Yeah, what could have been an entirely alienating game became much more approachable, I think, because of that, and with the IP. But I do think it's also a good reminder of, like, every GM, when they homebrew, feels like they need to reinvent the wheel every single time. And it's like, what have you played? What have you done that you liked? And do that in your game, dude. Like, this was such a no-brainer. I think this one lines up certainly for Mac, but I think for all of us, just to remember of like, oh yeah, I played Frosthaven, or I played Sekiro, or whatever the game is that you're like, okay, what are the mechanics that I enjoy? How can I give that to my players? And let me stop making it so hard for myself, for poor people like Mac that don't like read book, but just like, how do I how do I make the game engaging? Well, how am I engaged? And I don't think we ask that enough of like, whatever gets me going is going to, if I'm passionate about it, it's going to get the table passionate.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, and Danny, I'll also throw it to you to say your piece, but I actually haven't felt railroaded at all during this thing, because it would always make sense why we would go to the next place. You know what I mean? It was like we went to the theater because all of us had some sort of relationship with this play that was happening, and some of us were paid to be there. We wanted to figure out what's going on. And so it made sense that the first thing happened. But everything since then has been like, hey, you found that woman in the place, and she's said like, hey, you might find more stuff that might be interesting to you at this after party. I can get you in. And we were like, yeah, of course we'll do that. We have no other leads. And then after that, it was like, yeah, we found out that this guy was talking to the only living survivor of the last play is in Arkham Asylum. We got to go figure that out. And so then we went there. And so I think that the way that the card game sort of leads you doesn't really feel railroady, like because there's never a reason for us to want to go do something completely chaotically different, because it was sort of like, well, we don't really have a lot of leads at this point.
Right. It is actually a little easier, I think, to railroad your players in an investigation-based game. And I think that's also something maybe we're taking for granted here. Yeah. I'm actually I was on here talking about City of Mist a while ago, and a long time ago now, and I'm very into investigation-based games and kind of like the noir kind of world. And this game does an excellent job at that, I think, at creating an actual, it's investigation that we're all working on together. We're all trying to solve some kind of puzzle that isn't a traditional, D&D style puzzle, but is a puzzle nonetheless about what is going on here, how is this all connected, and what can we do next. And I think that keeps it from being very railroady in that sense. Yeah. And we'll see how railroaded you feel when next session we're in Paris for no reason, which is like the card game does this too, where it's just like, and now you're in Paris, because that's where the director of the play is, and you have to find him.
And I'm playing this from a big place of privilege, because I played the card game. I played the campaign twice with Mac. And so like, I know where we're going, and I know the NPCs, and I know like the big bads. So part of what's been fun for me is not to let that affect how I play at our table, or to be like, oh yeah, this is where we're going. Can that be what my character wants or sees, as a way to like, and I try not to metagame it too much. I'm also playing, per usual, a very brash character that does stuff before he thinks, and like that's my favorite kind of character to play, because I love characters that get themselves in trouble and then you have to backtrack. But me knowing that as a player, and knowing like not just the mechanics but where the story is going, hasn't been harder for me. If anything, it's elevated it, because I don't feel railroaded when Mac is like, you're going to Paris. I'm like, yeah, that's where the next scenario is. I know, Mac, that's where we're going. Like, great.
Yeah.
And it's so, and I would also say this is my favorite campaign of Chapter 1, because Chapter 2 of Living Card Game Arkham just came out. My absolute favorite. The writing of it is incredible. The big bad is my favorite of Lovecraft's big bads. It's like, the writing is great. So I haven't felt railroaded either, but I also know where we're going.
Yeah. All right, y'all, we're getting close to an hour here, so let's start wrapping up. And how we usually do this for system reviews is that kind of think about the system. And in this case, I would also add on the card game aspect and like the sort of value that brings to the TTRPG, but make those separate ratings. So to start off, I'll just give my rating. I think that this is a great system. I like to play it better than D&D. I think that the variance is lower in the dice rolls, so you're not like always feeling like, hey, I'm a rogue, I'm an expert thief, and I just fucked everything up. Okay, this feels terrible. It's like, because they're D6s and you can kind of control how much you want to try to go for a really important roll by rolling more dice. I just think it's a more elegant system. I like it a lot. I have my quibbles with it, like we talked about with some of the skill names and like figuring out what everything does. But I've really enjoyed my first foray into it. And even when we did, because we also did the starter set, they sell sort of a Arkham Horror starter set that has a little mystery in there for you. even when we played that, which wasn't as tuned as well, what we're doing, because the monsters in there were a little easier to deal with, and it didn't feel as scary. But that was great. I had a great time. It comes with puzzles that you literally pass over to your players and say, "Hey, go play with this little puzzle while we talk about other stuff." And like, what a great way to involve all your players doing all things. So I give it a definitely buy. Put it on your shelf, or just read for some game design sort of ideas. It's a great little system. But what about you guys?
Yeah, you don't do numbers. You don't do like
no. Usually we say like you should buy it, you should read it, or you should skip it. Essentially.
Oh, you should.
But you can do numbers. You can do numbers.
No, I don't want to mess up this long-established 3-tiered system.
Hey, guess what else has a 3-tiered system? The Michelin stars. Okay.
They also give recommendations. So I would say read it. I think everybody should play it at least once because the mechanics of it are nice. But to own it as a system, again, my biggest gripe is in the construction of the rule book. Both in terms of like the layout of it, but then, as I said earlier, I'm hungry for more madness mechanics. Like that stuff like that is always interesting to me. 10 Candles, I'm always going to love because there's so much interactivity with what goes on at the table for the players, and so I'm hungry for that. However, if you are tired of a D20 system, or I would say if you've never played a role-playing game before at a table, one could hazard, this is a great first foray into it. Of like, you got D6s, you know what to do, you have to have resource management, you need to spend your dice to do the thing. So yeah, definitely recommend it for that, and I highly recommend it in the way that we're playing it, of if you can port over a mystery, like one of the Sherlock Holmes books, one of the scenarios, something like that, I think works very well for this system.
And you, Mac?
I would say, yeah, I think that, I mean, first of all, big shout out just Edge Studios. They're the people that designed the game, and the system that they use is called DPS, the Dynamic Pool System. I think they also use it for the Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game, but don't quote me on that. And I would say buy the DPS system, the Dynamic Pool System. Find a game that you like that uses that system from Edge Studios and play it. Because the dynamic pool system for me is the big draw of this. And I think that the setting is also a great draw. If you've never explored the world of Arkham Horror before, if a living card game is not for you, the buy-in is pretty intense, so I get it. If you're more like, I want to just buy a PDF of a rulebook and do that, I think this is a great way to go into it. A great game for anyone that has that roommate, that brother, that sister, that friend that's like, man, I love Peaky Blinders. And you're like, well, do I have a role-playing game for you where you can play in the world of Peaky Blinders, except also there's horrible eldritch monsters that are trying to kill you.
Also tentacles.
Also tentacles. Yeah. Who doesn't love a good tentacle and a good Peaky Blinders?
From time to time. Yeah.
Anyway, Cillian Murphy and a tentacle. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Read it, but buy the Dynamic Pool System. And shout out to Edge Studios and Maxine Newman for and FFG for creating the living card game as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Any final thoughts about the living card game or anything like that? Because I know both of you love it so much. I just want to give you a little spot here. Maybe we'll come back and do a full episode just on that someday, especially with Chapter 2 out. But what is your give us your quick pitch for the living card game for folks who were listening to this and they're like, I kind of more interested in that part of it.
If you ever wanted to play the crunchiest game of all time without realizing it was a crunchy game at all, play this game. And I will say the first 5 times you play the game, it's rough, dog. It's you're holding together a lot of numbers. There's a bag of tokens to draw. You're managing a lot of resources.
You're gonna die.
You're gonna die.
You're gonna die.
You're gonna lose. And sometimes death isn't even the most frustrating. The most frustrating is, oh, you could have gotten this reward. How would I know to do that? I just had to do these 5 very specific things that I would never find out about. However, once you get over that hump, which for me, I think was the second or third time I played, it was just, oh, this is how every game should be designed and played. I am doing very crunchy stuff, which I was thinking about it. I'm engrossed in the world, and the writing and the art are unparalleled for that level of game in a way that every other game that I've encountered akin to it, it really pales in comparison because of the design.
Yeah, and Chapter 2 just came out. They're just like basically they for the first time ever in Arkham Horror the living card games history, which is like a long time now. I'm not going to say the number because I don't know, but it's like more than is it 10 years or something? It's like something.
I think it might be more than 10. Yeah,
between 5 and 10 years, I think. The first time they've ever done rotation, and they're starting with, as Danny mentioned earlier, Chapter 2. So I would highly recommend going out and getting the Chapter 2 core. I haven't played it yet, but just support these designers because they're good.
Yep.
And if you're scared of that, play Earthborn Rangers.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yep, not crunchy, but still all of the same things. And it's a living card game, so it's not collectible. You buy it once, and then you're not trading. Value of a singular card doesn't go up or down. The collection is the collection, and that's perfect.
Hell yeah. And if you're into getting a perfect collection, then maybe you should start with your collection of the Tabletop Podcast. Head on over, hit subscribe, start downloading our back catalog. You can always go to patreon.com/tabletop. We have a couple of things in there, including a sweet bonus show that we don't quite produce anymore. Maybe we'll bring that back. We also have an Ashcan version of a module that Franco and I wrote. We have a bunch of other things in there, little things for you to use in your games, but it's also a cool place to be. So go check it out if you want to support us that way. If you want to just contact us and give us a show idea or a topic you want us to discuss, you can go to tabletoppod.com, hit the contact form and send us there. We will read it. I promise you. So send them in. All right, everyone. We will see you next time for another episode of Tabletopped. Thank you, Mac. Thank you, Danny. Friends of the pod as always, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.